A blessed day, dear learner. May this video helps you in the journey of preparing a CBLM. CBLM, or competency-based learning material, is a very essential instructional tool in the conduct of competency-based training. It must contain information that will guide learners or trainees towards acquisition of knowledge, skills, and attitude required in the workplace. In order to produce a noteworthy CBLM, there must be systematic planning and consultation with experts from the academe and from the industry. More so, there is a need to consider the following factors. The first factor is the principles of CBT. In preparing for CBLM, take into account the fact that CBT is branded as individualized learning. Therefore, CBLM must be sufficient enough so that learning can be completed by the learner at his or her own pace with a minimal supervision of the teacher or the trainer. The second one is the training regulation. CBLM developer must have an in-depth comprehension in the content of the TR because the TR contains the competency standard is specific for every qualification. The third factor is the trainees' characteristics. Understanding the characteristics of learners or trainees will help the trainer create a tailored fit CBLM for a more effective and efficient transfer of information. So let's say the learner has a low language literacy rating. Reasonable adjustment can be made by producing CBLM that makes use of simple language and text. The next factor is adult learners' characteristics. So as to speak of andragogy or theory of adult learning, adult learners desire for a more task-oriented learning. That's why CBLM content is divided into smaller chunks of learning outcomes so that adult learners could focus on one unit at a time. Learning style is another factor. Considerable understanding of trainees' varied learning style is a paramount for trainer to develop a CBLM that contains varied activities that will cater to the need of visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learners. The 9 events of instruction is another thing. So in developing a CBLM, it must be helpful to reflect on Robert Gagne's 9 events of instruction and use it as a guide in starting on gaining learners' attention down to the assessment of their performance and encouraging them to apply the skills obtained. And the last but not least is the dimension of competency. So CBLM must be a good avenue for the acquisition of the 4 dimensions of competency, named as task skills, task management skills, job role and environment management skills, and contingency management skills. So this further help learners acquire strategies on how to adjust in the different situations of the job. The Technical Education Skills Development Authority, or TESDA, provides a standardized format for CBLM. Basically, it is divided into 2 major parts. First is the preliminary pages, and the second one is the instruction sheets. So this video intends to focus on the preparation of preliminary pages, composing of the front page, the page on how to use the CBLM, the list of competencies, module content, learning outcome summary, and learning experiences. So as a walkthrough on its front page, you will see there the title Competency-Based Learning Material, followed by a picture that speaks of the competency with the TESDA official logo. So the videos you've watched previously, from there, let us prepare a CBLM on one of the identified learning gap as a result of the training needs analysis in Cookery NC2 qualification. So therefore, our title will be Cookery NC2. Okay? And having the prepare appetizers as the unit of competency. So prepare appetizers. Okay. And thus, the module title will be Preparing Appetizers. Just changing the verb into present participle form by adding ing. And don't forget to indicate the sector where the qualification is classified. So far, Cookery NC2 is under the tourism sector. Again, how are you going to identify it? Just go back on the front page of the TR for Cookery NC2 because you can find there where it is belong. So the next line is for the name of the institution that developed the CBLM. So you may add its logo and address for better identification. In some, they also included the name of the person who developed the CBLM. The lower portion, appearing as footnote, must have the columns and rows that provides information about the institution logo, the qualification title and the module title, the date when the CBLM is developed and revised, and of course, the name of the developer. So if the CBLM is to be printed for the first time, revision number must appear as 00. But once a revision is made on the next printing, it should be changed as 01. The next is the document number or control number that is considered as data for some sort of quality assurance followed by the institution, as this helps them facilitate inventory of documents already at hand. And the last column is for the page number that may automatically be generated in the footnote. And this is the front page of the competency-based learning material. The next page of CBLM provides details on how to use the competency-based material. It must have warm salutation to let the learners or the trainee feel a friendly approach on the learning pace. So that's why you may see here, welcome training. It must also specify the unit of competency and the qualification. You also provide ideas on what topics it covers, as well as the expectation on the learners as she or he go through the learning session. So that's why in this sample, you may read some reminders like the trainers, as a trainer you are, or as a trainee, you are required to go through series of learning activities to complete the learning outcome, follow and perform the activities on their own. There is also some reminder as this: read the information sheet and complete the self-check, perform the task sheets and job sheets, submit outputs of the task sheets and job sheets to the trainer. And there are also a reminder that whenever the learner or the trainee is done with the learning activities, or he or she feel confident that is already have the competencies, he may ask the trainer to help her or him to evaluate. And this will compose the part of the content of how to use the CBLM. So you may be able to adapt some of this part, some of its content, but we highly recommend to modify it according to your own preference as CBT trainer, and of course according to the requirements of the qualification you are working with. So by the way, as a standard format style to be used for the entire CBLM, we will have to use the font style named as Bookman Old Style. The heading, or every heading of its page, must have a font size of 14, while the body must have a font size of 12. And this will be the part of how to use the competency-based learning material. Then the succeeding part is the list of competencies. On the top part, you must indicate the qualification title. Then in here, To fill in the columns with the list of competencies, there must be a need to identify the number of the unit of competency, the module title, and its code. So we will be needing the TR to complete the data for each column. So here's the TR, because in the TR, it provides you the information for the code and the core competency. So for Cookery NC2, there are 13 competencies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So therefore, the first core competency is clean and maintain kitchen premises. So we just have to write first a 1 in here and then copy paste the unit of competency. Okay. While the module title will just be the unit of competency, changing the verb into present participle form by adding ing. So therefore, it turns to be cleaning and maintaining kitchen premises. So you just have to copy the code and then paste it here. So transforming it into book old man style 12 font. So there you have the number, the unit of competency, the module title, and the code. So you may just have to continue doing the same thing on the remaining core competencies. If you're done completing the table, so you have completed the first unit of competency up to the last unit of competency, you should have to provide highlights on the particular content of the CBLM. So since the CBLM is intended for the unit of competency for prepare appetizers, the entire row should be bold-faced and italicized for better emphasis. So that's it. And this will be the page for the list of competencies. The next page shows the content and skills to be discussed in the module. So this is now named as module content. It identifies the unit of competency, which is prepare appetizers, and the module title, which is preparing appetizers. The module descriptor, which is obtained from the unit of descriptor of the TR, is also narrated here. So let's proceed to the TR part of the core competency, the TR of the prepare appetizers. So here's the unit descriptor. You may just have to leave that one there and then provide the information under this module descriptor part. Bookman style 12. Okay. Meanwhile, the nominal duration may also be identified based on the set number of hours needed in order to earn the required competencies. As a trainer, you are the one who could identify this matter based on the institution's requirement and what is specified in the TR. So let's say we will be needing 12 hours. 12 hours is allotted for the trainee to acquire the entire competency in the prepare appetizers. So then, the learning outcomes, as discussed in the session plan, are actually stated in the training regulation. So let's proceed in the TR once again. So there you have it. We have here 3 elements, so therefore the learning outcomes, 4 elements, therefore the learning outcomes would be 4. First is perform mise en place. Just get this one here, place it there. So that will be our first learning outcomes. Then the next one will be prepare range of appetizers. Okay. Then the third one will be present range of appetizers. And the last one is store appetizers. Okay, now we completed the learning outcomes. While this assessment criteria reflects the content or summary of the performance criteria, which can also be found in the training regulation. So it is just beside the element. So there you have the performance criteria. You just have to lift those items in here and then paste it there. So you may just have to organize it a little by putting them into an enumerated part. When you are done working on the first set of assessment criteria under the first element, you may just proceed working on the next one. So you just have to lift this one or the performance criteria there, and then just continue posting as what you have done on the first time. So just do it until you finished all the performance criteria on the training regulations. Okay. Supposing you are done taking all the performance criteria in the TR and indicating them here under the assessment criteria, so your module content will looks like this. Now let's proceed to the second to the last part of the preliminary page of CBLM, and it is the learning outcome summary. So this page shows the title of the LO, the contents, the assessment criteria, the conditions, and the assessment method. So let's say we will be working on learning outcome number 3, present range of appetizers. So if you could still remember, during our training needs analysis, the conduct of training needs analysis, it is the identified gap where the trainees need to be trained, and therefore in the session plan making, that is the focus of the plan. Learning outcome number 3, present a range of appetizers. Okay, so that will become our title. And contents are actually topics deemed necessary to achieve the performance criteria. So same as the way we identified the learning contents in the session plan, we must consult the TR for the identification of the contents. So since this is the LO number 3, present a range of appetizers, from this part or portion, we identified the topics. So you should always have to consult the TR for the identification of those contents. So therefore, in here, we will indicate the factors to consider in plating dishes. So going back to the session plan, the identified learning content is factors to consider in plating dishes such as appetizers. So we will just paste it down here, content. That will be the first learning content. Oops, should have to do some formatting. Then the second content must be different styles of presenting appetizers. Alright, so there you have it. So you just have to consider the formatting. It should always be bookman old style. Okay. Meanwhile, the assessment criteria will be the listed performance criteria in the TR. So we will just go back to the TR. So these are the performance criteria in the TR that is used as measure to assess the competence of the training. So therefore, you just have to get the performance criteria here and then paste it under the assessment criteria. Oops. Copy that one. You just have to fix well the numbering. The first one is appetizers are presented attractively according to enterprise standard. The second one is appetizers are presented using sanitary practices. The third assessment criteria is suitable plates are selected according to enterprise standards. And the last is factors in plating dishes are observed in presenting appetizers. So the assessment criteria lifted from the performance criteria in the TR. Then let's proceed to conditions. Conditions refers to the list of workplace location, equipment, tools and accessories and supplies, and training materials. So these are the needed things by the learner to realize the achievement of the learning outcomes. So let's say we identify that the workplace will be our cooking laboratory room. Okay. Then perhaps the equipment we will be needing for the conduct of the skills or the competency is we will be needing gas range, of course, refrigerator. These are the materials for actual laboratory, and for some sort of lecture discussion we will be needing laptop, LCD projector, and maybe audio speaker if you will be having some sort of video presentation. So for the tools and accessories and supplies, under here we identify that we will be needing, of course, various type of plates, plus some different food preparation tools, and then of course utensils as well. If there is a need to specify those food preparation tools and utensils, please do so for better guidance of your learners in the performance of their tasks in the laboratory. We will be also needing some food supplies, of course. Okay. Now, how about the training materials? Training materials may include whiteboard marker, if you will be just discussing something, writing on the board for some instruction, of course, ball pen, magazines will do. And why magazine? Because magazine can provide you some helpful tips or styles in plating appetizers, and actually the items under these conditions can be found in the training regulation. So if I'm not mistaken, that is under the list of tools and equipment. So let us just look at that part in here. You may just see those list of tools under the last page or so. Ayan, there. List of tools and equipment for cookery NC2. So this part will provide you ample idea of what are the required tools and equipment needed for the training of the cookery NC2. Then last item in the learning outcome summary is the assessment method, or Perhaps this is the instrument to be used to measure the trainings acquired by the trainee. So from there, we identified, if you could still remember, in our session plan, we identified the assessment plan. So you have a plan of providing them written tests. So therefore, you can use that one as your assessment method. If you will be requesting the trainee to provide you portfolio as evidences of her output, you can also indicate that one here, portfolio. And maybe you can also request the trainee to do some kind of demonstration. Actually, you can refer to the training regulations so that you could have ideas on the different methods of assessments you can use in order to measure whether the learner already achieved the competency for the said learning outcomes. Okay, so this is now the learning outcome summary. And the last page, or this page, is followed by the details of learning experience. So the last part of CBLM, or the CBLM preliminary page. So this table shows you listing of activities for presentation, practice, and feedback, which can be obtained from the session plan you have done before. So you may see there the presentation, the practice, and the feedback. So what you should have to do is just to get this information there and then paste them under the learning activities, because it is supposedly the activities your learners needs to conduct in order for them to achieve the learning outcome, which is present a range of appetizers. Then after the learners perform reading of the information sheet as stated, the practice will be answering the self-check. Okay, again, answering the self-check 3. Answering self-check 3.3-1. The next one is feedback. To get the feedback, of course, the learner must have to compare answers to the answer key. Okay, so that is for the part of providing them the modular or individualized learning. So when the learners will be asked to view the PowerPoint presentation, so that is also part of their learning activity. And after viewing that, there would be practice, which is answering the self-check provided after the PowerPoint presentation. Then, of course, as a means of getting a personal feedback on what she could now accomplish, he or the trainee must have to compare the answer or her answer to the answer's key. So also, another form or method of presentation is demonstrating the proper way of plating the appetizer. So that's why in here there would be a learning activity as such. Then after that, of course, the learner will be performing task sheet. Okay, performing task sheet. Then as a means of feedback, the learner should have to evaluate his or her own performance using the performance criteria. So therefore, it should be indicated there. Okay, so just have to keep on going until you're done obtaining all the present, practice, and feedback as part of the learning activities for the learning content number 1 and the learning content number 2. Okay. Let's say we're done transferring the learning content from the session plan. Going to this part or page of the learning experience in the CBLM, do not forget to check the font style. It must be book. It must be book man old style with a font size of 12. Okay. Then on the right side, you would notice that there is a special instructions. So in here, the special instruction states what the training materials to secure and where to have it, the information sheets, operation sheets, task sheets, and self-check to be used, and the sequence of the activity. So in this case, I provided a little introduction stating that the learner should be able to prepare and present a range of hot, cold appetizer according to standards. And in order for him or her to do that, the special instruction is that he must go through the information sheets on the CBLM. The learner will be watching videos and viewing PowerPoint presentations. Of course, if there is a need for the assistance of the trainer, don't hesitate to ask. The learner should also answer the self-checks. And since it is a self-paced learning, there is also an instruction where the learner will be able to do some feedback by comparing her answer to the answers key. And of course, the learner will be completing the task sheets and job sheet that he must also do some evaluation using the performance checklist. And there is also an instruction, special instruction specifying that there is a need to document the output. Why? Because this will become part of the portfolio for the institutional competency. And commonly, this special instruction is ended with a line like this, reminding that the learner will be able to proceed to the next learning outcomes after doing all the activities in this LO. And that is the end of the CBLM preliminary page, because the succeeding page is an information sheet. This part counts as an example of instructional sheets, wherein there will be a separate video provided for the discussion of this matter. So I hope you learned something from watching this and get a good start for the preparation of competency-based learning materials.